Hey, welcome to Whole Human Psychology. I'm Isaac Wicker. Today we're going to be talking about our sixth part of our 8-part series on threat cycles. So today's cycle is the addiction distress cycle. So your distress leads to being addicted, and addiction actually leads back to being distressed. And so the bottom line is basically that you are addicted. Everybody in America is basically addicted to something. And we can think of heavy hitting addictions like cocaine and marijuana, but there are so many widespread addictions that also destroy your life. And so I just want to name a few. I'm going to look at my list and name a few addictions, and you'll probably fall into one or multiple of these categories. So these are just ones that I wrote down. I'm sure there's a lot more. So we've got social media, video games, caffeine, alcohol, sugar, smartphones, marijuana, pornography, gambling. These are all addictions. These are probably multiple addictions that you are connected to. And sometimes they're hard to see because they're so widespread in America. And some of them are even celebrated. Like there's so many shirts out there that's like, I'm caffeinated right now, celebrating a caffeine addiction. Or there's addictions that are actually expected, that you're in a way expected to be addicted to social media because you have to respond right now or you're going to miss something. You have to be addicted to your smartphone because you didn't respond to my text in 30 seconds or less. So there's all of this way that addictions are actually weaved into our culture, expected in our culture. That we can see pornography addiction as healthy, and we can see caffeine addiction is just what people do, and alcohol addiction is how people have fun. Of course, there are ways that it goes too far, and everybody kind of shuns that and looks down on that. But that the actual matter is that most of us are at the point of addiction. So I want to, before we get into kind of the nitty gritty of addiction and distress, I want to just start out by talking about what is addiction for? If we have it so widespread in our culture, if so many of us are connected into addictions, what are they for? They must serve a purpose, they must serve a function. And the Isaac version of what addictions are for is that they're meant to patch up something deeper that's going on in our hearts. They're meant to try to cover up, distract this deeper part of our hearts. And what's there in the deeper part of our hearts? We have these big wounds, but not just wounds. We have huge needs and desires and fears and beliefs. We have all this stuff going on in our hearts. And again, we can think of these heavy hitting addictions being connected to abuse in some way. And those are like clear wounds and clear addictions. But often we've got so many smaller wounds that are actually, if you get into them, really big, deep, painful wounds. And they're connected to needs we have and desires that we have and beliefs that we have and fears that we have. So we've got all this stuff bubbling in our heart, and actually we just don't know what to do with it. We don't know where to go with it, and it hurts. And if we sit with it too long, it feels like it's going to destroy us. And so we have to seek out some sort of relief. And it may sound silly, but that might just be like looking at your phone. Like, I have this deep need to belong and to matter and feel like my time is meaningful. I'm going to look at my phone and maybe I got a text message. Maybe I got a like on Facebook. Maybe I got some response from somebody to show me that I matter, to show me that I belong. Or I feel like I need to be productive and earn my value and give something to the world and be of worth. And so I caffeinate myself because I don't want to fail. And so we have all these ways of trying to patch up these really deep human needs, desires, and wounds. But it doesn't work. It doesn't last. And what happens is the patch wears off. We have really big hearts, so we have deep needs, and it wears through everything that we put on top of it. And so it shows back up. Wait, you didn't actually figure this out. I don't actually feel like I belong. I don't actually feel like I mean anything. I don't feel like I matter. I feel still like I just hurt, and I'm nobody, and I'm lost. And so that distress comes up again, and we don't know what to do with it, so we seek relief again. We go back to where we found relief last time and try again, and try again, and try again, and try again. And so this big stuff that's in our heart comes up over and over again, pushes through anything we put on top of it, any distraction we try to put to get rid of it. Okay, we can get drunk for a night, and we can even black out. Okay, we forgot about all this stuff going on inside of us for one night, and then you wake up, and then it's there again. So then you've got to do it all over again. And so this pattern builds up where we have stuff going on inside of us that we can't cope with, that we can't deal with, that we can't live with. And so we run away to find a different way to cope with it, to try to patch it up, to try to smooth it over, to try to distract ourselves. And it doesn't work. But what happens as we do this over time? There's two main kind of signals of addiction. One is that we actually have a need for the addiction. We become dependent on the addictive behavior. And the other is that we build up tolerance for the addictive behavior. And then these work together to ramp up everything. So what does dependence mean? Dependence means that I actually need the addiction to feel like I'm at baseline, to feel even just okay. The addiction doesn't make me feel great anymore. It just makes me feel like I'm functioning. I think you can think of caffeine as maybe the most common example that we see so often, right? You wake up and you're just feeling totally dead. You can't function, you can't operate, you can't engage with the world until you have caffeine that'll make you feel normal. It doesn't make you feel great, doesn't make you feel super productive. It just brings you back from like feeling really crummy to feeling okay. I can function again. That's dependence. That you actually need the addiction to function. And that if you don't have the addiction, it causes distress. Remember that we were using the addiction in the first place to try to deal with distress. And now just not having the addiction causes distress. So we've got all the distress going on in our hearts, but then we also have just the distress of not having the thing we're addicted to. And the other thing that happens is tolerance, which basically means when you do the behavior, it doesn't give you the same results. So maybe the first time you had a big cup of coffee, you were just like off the walls and you were super productive and you could focus and you could do everything for hours. But after you've been having coffee for years, you have that same big cup of coffee and you're like, I'm awake now, I guess I can function. So it's the same input, but actually diminishing returns. And so what this means is that you actually need to go to higher levels of input, more extremes, to try to get that relief you were seeking. And again, we hit back on distress, because as you get more extreme, you actually end up damaging yourself. We pursue the addiction so far that we damage ourselves. And in some cases, it's hard to see that, but in others, it's easier to see that. Like with alcohol, you're damaging your system. But with all of these ways, right? With caffeine, you're damaging your system. And so we can see that, okay, with stuff you put in your body, that makes sense. But what about like video games? How am I damaging my system? In a lot of ways. But just a couple, like often it affects your functioning in other areas of your life. Like maybe you just don't go to sleep until it's way too late. And then you don't get enough sleep. And then you're not rested for the next day and you can't receive the next day. Or you're playing video games at the expense of spending time with your family or your friends, or doing the things that you're supposed to do around the house. So some things can damage us directly, and others can damage us through neglect of health. But they cause us to do things that aren't good for us, or to avoid doing the things that are good for us. And so again, we hit back into distress. So as you're doing more extreme behaviors to fulfill your addiction, to get that relief, those extreme behaviors hurt you. They cause distress in the end. And so you have distress not having the addiction, but then in pursuit of the addiction, the extreme ways that you pursue the addiction also cause distress. And so we get stuck in this really nasty cycle of distress. The thing that causes distress in your life, the thing that destroys your life, also is the thing that causes relief in your life. And so as you're distressed about destroying your life, destroying your relationships, you also are in desperate need of relief. And so you pursue the addiction again. And around it goes. The addiction hurts you, destroys your life, causes distress, and yet it's the thing you need to go back to get relief. And I want you to start to pay attention to that. Because I'm guessing in a lot of ways you've come to just accept your addictions, or you haven't even realized they're there. And so you might be listening to this and be like, yeah, that doesn't happen for me. Yeah, I'm on social media a lot, but it's not destroying my life. It's not really negatively affecting me. I want to challenge that. And so with some, like with drug addictions, it can be clearer how it's destroying your life. But I want you to start to pay attention. How is your social media use affecting your life? How is your smartphone affecting your life? How is your smartphone affecting your relationships? Because it's real. I know for me, I switched to a non-smartphone about 2.5 years ago. And I didn't think I used my phone very much. I had been very intentional up until that point to delete apps and to not have social media on it and to try to stay away from my phone as much as possible. I switched to a non-smartphone, and within 48 hours, I noticed my brain functioning differently. It felt like there was a claw around my brain that released. And I didn't think smartphones were affecting me that much. But the amount of time that we spend here actually really affects how we see ourselves, how we engage with other people, the sense of agitation that we feel. Like, just try it. Try turning off your phone for 48 hours and see how your body and brain react. Because another part that happens is we get so focused on the addiction that we actually start to push away the stuff not related to addiction. We find it boring or uninteresting, or it doesn't matter, or it's scary or whatever. And we avoid it. We avoid other people. We avoid real contact with the real world in favor of kind of an artificial, addictive feeling. So that's one challenge for you, is just to start paying attention to what addictions you think you have. From my list, I'll go through it again. Social media, video games, caffeine, alcohol, sugar, smartphones, marijuana, pornography, gambling, and there's more. Which of those really connect with you? And then start to pay attention. How is that affecting you? How is that affecting the way you live? How is that affecting the way you relate to other people? And once you start noticing that, and actually if you want to make a change, here are some steps I suggest. So the first is actually just getting help. Building an alliance with someone. It can be a professional therapy or treatment programs or support groups, but it can also be friends. Just exposing yourself to just say, like, look, I really struggle with this and I need help. That accountability can be so important. And for some addictions, you actually need a really strong support network, because what happens is the neural networks in our brain get so built around the addiction that it's hard for us to escape. That everything in our life kind of leads back without a strong transition point. That's why alcohol addiction centers, like, you have to be impatient. You have to like kind of leave your world behind and try to connect in with a new world for multiple days, for weeks sometimes. Because you're trying to battle this addiction that's shown up in all of your life and kind of trained your life to lead back to this addiction. And so then this leads into the next point of avoiding temptation, avoiding even getting close to the addiction. Because the neural networks are so built up that once you start activating even a peripheral edge of the network, it can light up the whole network and be so strong and create that kind of hunger for the addiction again. And so it's not just about, like, let's say if it's pornography, just avoiding the pornography sites, but a lot of it can be about blocking pornographic images in Facebook or on social media, that these things that lead you into it. And so being able to avoid the temptation of the addiction. I know for me, sugar is really an issue. And so I'm always trying to be mindful of what I'm buying at the grocery store. Because I can buy something at the grocery store and just be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to eat it though. This is for somebody else. Or I can accept a gift from somebody and get sugar into the house. And once sugar's into the house, I'm thinking about it. It's like I have to be resisting that temptation all the time, and eventually I'll be at a weak point and eat all the sugar. And so if I'm serious about getting rid of a sugar addiction, I need to make hard cuts and hard rules that don't even allow those sugary things to be in the house. And then the last thing is go to the root of the issue. We talked about the addiction cycle where the addiction is taking over, but there's a point where why was there the addiction in the first place? Why was the addiction necessary? What was going on in your heart that you needed to escape from? This is scary. This is one of the scariest things humans can do, is face their own hearts. Face their own hearts, which are full of wounds and questions and beliefs and desires and needs. What's going on in your heart that you need to escape from? Is there a way to find healing for that? Is there a way to live with that? Is there a way to face it instead of running away or numbing it out or distracting yourself? This is hard. Don't do it alone. This is again a place to ask for help. Talk to friends. This is a really important place to bring in spirituality. Bring in God. Talk to spiritual leaders. Find friends who also have big questions and big desires and big hopes. Because this is actually where healing and freedom can really happen. You can fight an addiction all your life, and that can do a lot for you. But the healing is really going to be about being able to live with yourself. Live with what's going on in your heart. Because if you can't live with what's going on in your heart, eventually you're just going to find another addiction to deal with it. You're just going to replace one addiction with another one because you can't handle being with yourself still. And so the question I want to leave you with is, what makes the addiction life seem better than real life? What makes your addicted life seem like it's the better option than real life? What makes real life so scary and hard to face? When you start peeling into that question, it's going to be scary, but that's also the road to real living, real freedom. That's the hard road to take, but it's also the best road to take. Thank you for joining me, and let me know how this road is going for you. It's a road I'm traveling, it's a road everybody's traveling, and we can do it together, and it's a beautiful road to take. Thank you.